Okay, so today we're speaking to Ayo Akinwolere. Now, he is a former presenter of the household favorite, Blue Peter, big, everyone's favorite when they were growing up. And he's been presenting for over 13 years now, working with all the major broadcasters, Channel 4, Channel 5, BBC, obviously. Passionate about sport and football especially. He's now hosting a worldwide weekly football magazine show called Premier League Today.
That's up your street, that.
Obviously, basically, I just want to talk to the man about football. Like,
Yeah.
that's what it's about.
Not going to go there because we could be here all day.
It's true. But it's not just football he loves. Ayo has also set two world records. Yeah, two world records for swimming in one of the...
Nothing, don't worry about it, it's fine.
the Nigerian modesty there.
I actually did it when I was sleeping.
So he set two world records for swimming in one of the deepest stretches of water on Earth. And in 2015, he created the Swim Challenge, which is a project looking to prove that people of colour can swim. On top of that, he's a keen lover of music, so created Juju Music, a club night to showcase his collection of West African music and just share his love of his Nigerian British culture. So, hello, welcome.
Yo, that is a banging intro, Every meeting I go to, I might just be like, guys, just before we start, can we this right now? It is amazing. You say all that stuff, and you go through the process to your career doing all these amazing things, and then you sometimes don't really think about what you're doing at the time, and then you read all that stuff out, and you're like, yo, man, I've done a lot. And that's just some of the stuff. And I'm very grateful to still be working, to be fair with you. These are hard times for a lot of people, and I'm just blessed to still have a job in the industry and that people still want to work with me. But honestly, man, can't believe it. 13 years or whatever in this industry. Where has the time gone? It's incredible.
Right. Okay. So today there's a lot we want to talk about. So we're going to be chop, chat, and chilling. Okay. So in chop, we're going to be talking about food, and in the chat section, we know that you've got a special topic to share that we're really looking forward to getting into.
Yeah.
And then chill. We're going to wrap up with some things on culture, particularly some travel, and some music as well.
Boom. So let's get into this.
Should we go? Let's do it.
So, if you were cooking for one of your heroes, who would you cook for, and what would you cook for them, and why?
Interesting. Okay. Like anyone, I've got so many heroes, but someone that I really respect and rate is the director Steve McQueen. I love films, and I've always been a fan of films from a very young age. And what I love about him is that he attaches everything he does to truth. And this is a guy that's really interested in storytelling, not just black stories, not just white stories, but just pure storytelling. And that comes across. And he's uncompromising in the way he makes his films and in his honesty and directness. That is how we as the viewer take it. So if I was going to cook for Steve McQueen, I want to cook something honest and direct. Pounded yam and egusi. Hey, you see? That's what I want. That's because you want a meal that you can kind of pick at, eat at. You can start discussing what's in the egusi with maybe assorted meats or maybe a bit of crayfish in there or whatever. And then, obviously the pounded yam itself is a heavy meal. But not just that, yeah. We're going to have a little bottle of Star. Just to drown it down. Let it go down the throat, Mr. McQueen. I swear, man. I've always he's actually someone I've always wanted to meet, and actually, thinking about sharing one of my childhood favorites. Because I actually grew up in Nigeria, so I was there till I was 8 years old, and I always remember pounded yam, man. And my mom would make that egusi, man, so delicious. The rich greens. And then sometimes she put crayfish with a little treat or whatever from time to time, or she just put straight meat, or she just do egusi with fish. And it was so delicious. And, it's just that mixture, the pounded yam and the egusi together. Oh, Lord, I'm dribbling now even talking about it. But the opportunity to be able to share something so dear to me and then start talking about something else that's so dear to me with one of my heroes, film and directing. Oh man, the possibilities are endless, and I think we'll have a really good chat. He'll be fast asleep by then, and then I'll take his career or something. But this is my ploy.
To be honest, like I 100% agree with you on that dish. Egusi is my favorite dish. Like, and I think, as you say, when you're talking about it with the crayfish, I was thinking about a bit of bitter leaf in there.
That's what I said about the greens. Stick some bitter leaf in there, man. It wakes it up, It wakes that dish up.
But yeah, I can imagine it like just like a man like that, just like really appreciated that sort of like very grounded, very authentic, and with like
you'd have to have him wash his hands in the bowl as well. Like, you have to have the bowl first. Like
100%. Do you know what I mean? That's like that's all ceremonial.
It's about the process, and you know what my mom used to do as well. Like what my mom used to do when we were younger is to make it more of a mound. She'll wet her hands and then sort of pound yam. So it's a nice round thing, and then you put it on the plate. But you know what's been mad though? Like, since my parents actually live in America at the moment, and since not living close to my parents, I swear my stomach has shrunk. Because when my mom makes me that dish, I'm like, yo, these portions are ridiculous. We can't keep eating like this. This is like indulgent. So I'm hoping Steve McQueen understands we come with big portions in whatever he eat, and then we'll have the Star as well as a nice, crisp, light beer just to wash it down. I think it's a combination of all the flavors that actually, I mean, obviously I wasn't drinking Star when I was a kid, but, having found Star in the UK, and, I've got a local shop here in South London where I get it from, it's my go-to summer drink. And I just think like all those flavors really complement each other. It's something we don't talk about often. I guess in Europe, people talk about having a glass of wine and stuff, but for me, Nigerian food, sometimes a crisp beer, a Gulda, a Star, just tops it off nicely,
100. I think the funny thing is, obviously we have the big bottles, which was, I found it really interesting because someone was like, oh, that's a really big bottle. I'm like, it's a pint, like it's not that deep, like, and
more than a pint though. It looks like more than a pint.
Yeah, well, I think it is a tad more, because it's like a pint's like 565 ml, right, and that's like 600 or something like that. But fundamentally, it's a pint. But like I don't want to have anything else. Yeah, I don't want to have it in a pint glass, and I don't want to have like any smaller. Like that is just, as you say, it's just throughout the meal, just to kind of lubricate. Do you know what I mean? It's just it's brilliant.
Love that word. Yes, it's exactly what it does. Just let it wash down slowly. What I was going to say, when you have your Star, and I get it in the big bottle, do you drink straight from the bottle, or do you pour it into a smaller glass?
I often pour it into a slightly smaller glass, but not a pint glass.
No. It's not meant
we're like
we're drunk like that. Let's not get this twisted. It's a little small glass, and then you're drinking it nice. You have the food as well. But for me, like, Nigerian food feels like it's almost ceremonial, and I think like, because you've got such a mixture of ingredients and rich ingredients as well in a lot of Nigerian cooking, it feels like a ceremony in preparation, but also in eating. And if we're talking about, we're just joking about getting into wash your hands. It's all that, wash your hands in a little dish, before you have your food, and then the food comes off, and then you use your hands to eat the food, hand to mouth. And I can't think of a better tool than your hands to eat food anyway. Like, if I see someone eating pounded down with a fork and knife, I'm like, yo, please. And Mr. McQueen, you have to eat it with your hands, sir. Come on, sir. You eat it with your hands, with the egusi. And then you scoop it with the egusi. And you want just a little bit of meat or a little bit of fish on it. Not too much. Just a little. So the sauce glistens the pounded jam.
This is a pro. This is a pro right here.
Right, so let's get into the chat. You wanted to talk about why we don't see more black travelers on TV, and I think let's just start by why was that the topic you wanted to just talk about?
I've been interested in it for a while actually. I've actually got a friend who, one of my very good friends, has mentioned on the pits, has just written a book called Afropean, and it basically traces the journey of black people across Europe, and we've always spoken about it because obviously I started life on Blue Peter, and the idea of Blue Peter, the ship itself, that blue ship, it was a ship commandeered to go on voyages of discovery. And when we sort of break that down, what was a voyage of discovery back in those days? It was colonial. It was kind of going to those far off lands and sticking the flag down in the name of Britain, right? So I basically, for 5 years of my life, became a black traveler, and I was really interested in how people in various countries reacted to me, and I thought there's something here. There's a nuanced story here that's not being told. Not a story of colonialism, but more of a story of a sharing of experience. And what I found as I was traveling was finding real similarities between Chinese culture in some parts versus Nigerian culture, Indian culture in some parts versus Nigerian culture. Going to Brazil, the rich north, in the north of Brazil, Bahia, rich Yoruba culture there. And I'm like, these are stories that as a British Nigerian, I shouldn't be able to tell, but also it gives you a different, gaze, really. I think what we've done in Britain for so long is that we've created explorers and we've created travelers in the guise of the colonial explorer. And you know, even the way I used to watch a lot of the Marco Polo stuff when I was a kid, you know, around the world in 80 days. And I was really interested in it because, like, I loved the countries he went to, but then I'd be like, bro, get involved, man. Like, you know, these people are doing ceremonies. It's like, I'm not sure what to do. Or should I have a dance? I'm like, look, the way I'd do that and the way a lot of people I know would do that would be like, yo, if there's dancing, let's get involved. And I always think that there's nothing wrong with having a white traveler, but let's mix things up. So a few years ago, I was actually trying to find the article today, and actually the newspaper have deleted it, which is fascinating. So I did an interview with the Telegraph, and they were talking about why there weren't that many, you know, black people in the industry. And this may have been like 6-7 years ago. I can't remember the date exactly. And I basically said, look, I love certain people. I love Dimbleby. I love all these people that I've seen on TV. But, you know, if Jonathan Dimbleby is going to Ethiopia versus if a British Ethiopian young man or woman is going to Ethiopia, what people are going to unlock is very, very different. And what we see about the country is very, very different. The reaction to a white man in African countries might be very different to the reaction to a black man or a black woman from African countries. You know, me going to, you know, Nigeria, you know, Omowa, that's, you know, a child of our own, that's in Yoruba. That's how they greet me. Omowa, wasibi, wale, otidele, you know, I've come home. And being able to articulate that I've got a duality as well, I'm being English as well as Nigerian, really adds a bit more flavor, you know, and I can take that perhaps you as the white guy or the white woman might not be able to go, because often, you know, the reaction based on colonialism to white people across the world is often relatively positive to a certain degree. And that opens up a huge gate in how people travel. But actually, the gaze to someone that is black or of an ethnicity is varied around the world in many respects. Like, you know, in China, you know, people were pointing at me thinking I was the devil, like, you know, based on particular folklore. You know, in Turkey, people were coming up to me, touching my skin, thinking it was going to fall off on their hands because they'd never seen anyone this black. And I just thought, actually, this is how we tell a real tale of Britain. And we can't keep looking at it through the white middle class gaze, which is often the gap year, or, you know, which is actually isn't about getting involved. It's about being an observer. And for me, travel, and I'm not saying necessarily that if anyone was black that they wouldn't be observers, but for me, it's about getting involved. It's about participating, but it's also being about truthful and being honest. So, you know, it just gives a different gaze. And I just think we're at a time in our society as both with us as people with a duality, we're at a time where actually, isn't it time that we also saw travel through our gaze, but also inspiring others to go traveling that look like us? You know, the sad reality is, and I still think about it, I don't know about you guys, is that when I'm thinking of traveling, I look at the vital statistics of the area. I'm like, yo, might just stay away from Russia for the time being. Yeah, you know, it might be an interesting one. But also, if I do go to Russia, what a wonderful story that is, and what can we unlock from that journey? You know, what I found out about, you know, Moscow or certain parts of Russia was that there was a huge alliance with certain Eastern African countries, because there was an exchange of minerals and things for an exchange of knowledge. So there's been that transport of black people, Africans, going to Russia for years, yet there's still this mad bed of racism in Russia as well. So I'm interested in how those you know, me and my friend Johnny Pitts, who wrote Afro-European, he was telling me he went to Russia and he was just, you know, those stories for me were just so vivid, and I saw myself in those stories as well. And, you know, it was absolutely fascinating. So yeah, I think for me, it's not that I'm like, but actually let's readdress what travel means. Let's readdress who gets to have the voice for travel. And that's what I basically wanted to talk about a little bit.
Yeah, it's super interesting because I read Africans. I read it before, and it was a really wonderful story. Like just traveling around Europe, as you say, with a different gaze. I suppose what I want to understand, like in terms of doing that travel. For example, Johnny goes to Russia, and I think you alluded to that you've been to Russia yourself. What sort of why is it that maybe you two felt kind of comfortable going, whereas others may not have, or like what kind of enabled you to go there, which you know you feel that others may not feel that they could do.
That's a very good. I think on one sense it's role models. You have pioneers and you have people pioneers have been there. Like if you don't, like I often think there's a really beautiful book, small book by Chinua Achebe called Africa's Tarnished Name, and he talks about the first explorers coming to African countries and the stories they were transporting back to the motherland, which would be Europe, right? And how spoke and wax lyricked about their journeys to this far-fetched world. And basically what you're doing is you're building foot soldiers who also want to take part in that exploration, who also want to come across and see what you've seen based on your books. And I just don't think we've had that from the Black community. So I say to Johnny, like, what makes us do that? And he's like, I firmly believe that I'm a pioneer. Like I don't ever want to be held back by race in order to do something. I'm also lucky, and Johnny's also lucky, that Johnny's dad, he's a Black man from America. Basically, his dad traveled with Starlight Express, like as an actor. So Johnny and his dad were in Japan for a little while. They've been to lots of places. Me, from my family's point of view, my dad's lived, so I lived in France for a little bit when I was a kid, in Nancy. My dad's traveled across to Canada, Germany, Italy, when we were kids, like my mom lived in Japan as well when we were kids. And it's really interesting because a lot of people don't really understand. There was an interesting journey with when in the 60s, a lot of Nigerian nurses were doing exchanges with Japanese nurses as well. And there was a skill swap. So my mom took part in that. She spent time in Japan, and no one knows about these things. So, me, and also my granddad. So my granddad's like the leader of the Methodist Church, or he was. He's not with us anymore. But my granddad used to go to the Vatican and meet the Pope and all that kind of stuff. So I've got a rich history of travelers in my family. Something I was reading about recently, I was talking to a woman the other day, and she's writing a magazine. I can't remember what it's called, sort of like the Black traveling magazine. And she was like, I'm reading stories or finding out stories about explorers from West Africa going to South America and trading pre-Columbus. So, there's been this rich history of African travelers that just hasn't permeated to the mainstream. And, being an educated middle-class Nigerian person, background, and that's what I know. Johnny is a working class mixed heritage British person, but he's had that entry point and that beginning of a father who was an actor that took him across the world. So that's all we know, if that makes sense. So it's also an essence of privilege. I realize that I'm privileged in my journey, and there's privileges between various races and various ethnicities as well. So I think, I'd hate to say it, I do think I'm some sort of a pioneer in some sort. And if I'm honest, that's also what attracted me to the Blue Peter job, because I'm like, I get to travel the world. I can be that guy that's like, yo, just go. We're in Japan, we're in Turkey, Italy, we're in whatever. Even when the first thing I did was I went back to Nigeria. I wanted to show that duality, Kilishare, what is your name? Give me some, I speak in the mother tongue, so the Black British experience is just a Caribbean experience. It's also an African experience as well. So, for me, travel's just heaven. And I just think the more we have nuanced stories, male, female, and ethnicity, the better, really.
I guess I want to know if you had the opportunity, I guess, to create like a travel show for TV, what kind of show would you like to create?
Something I love is food, and food's one of those little journeys, for me, food's changed my life. When I went to Italy, I've never eaten You know, I love food. For me, just changed it. Like in terms of its simplicity. And I love a track comes to food, but also, you know, I'm an adventurer. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, you're there. Sorry, you froze a bit. Yeah, I'm also an adventurer, and I've always been interested in, you know, religion and religious journeys. You know, there was an idea we were playing with a little while ago for me called which religion is mine, you know, because I went to Brazil and I found I was more closely connected to the Yoruba stuff in Bahia than I have been growing up as a Catholic in Nigeria. And I wondered what that meant and what that meant for me in terms of identity, but also what that meant for a whole group of Black people from Nigeria who the indigenous religions are now sort of subordinate to more Christian sort of religions, which is really fascinating for me. And for me, that's yet again another travel journey that we've not really seen before, like how people in Bahia have preserved the indigenous, whereas people from the motherland have moved away so far away from the indigenous as well. And, you know, I remember going to Brazil, and my mom was like, "Oi, be careful, they're going to chop your blood, they're going to eat you," you know, like, because, you know, we were talking about juju and you were talking about black magic, and that's what I wanted to see because I've never seen it before. Yeah, I came back safe and sound, you know, they welcomed me with open arms, and they were like, you're a child of our own, you know. Guy was speaking to me in Yoruba in the middle of the street in Bahia. I'm like, oh, this blew my mind. So, I mean, there are various journeys, and, you know, the fact is, I got to Bahia and we talk about food as well. Akaraje is one of their main foods. And that's akara in Nigeria. And you're like, yo, okay, this is madness. And people just, you know, and they're so connected to that heritage of theirs. And I think, you know, back to the sort of Black traveler idea, what a wonderful nuance to be able to compare the food I ate growing up to the food that's halfway across the world as well. A mixture of Portuguese and West African culture. It's phenomenal, man.
I was nodding.
I want to jump on the plane.
I was nodding vehemently because a couple of things. So the first one was what you said about like Brazil in particular. Like one of my I don't do regrets, but like one of my regrets, and I will rectify it, was going to Brazil and not getting a chance to go up to see more of that kind of that Yoruba culture that is deep there. But then the point you made about the religions, I think it was super important. Like there's a conversation that, you know, we were having at the Igbo society about the fact that obviously there is that indigenous religion or mythology, and obviously now that's it is seen as like a bad thing compared to like Christianity as like
almost primitive.
Positive.
Yeah,
I think it's
primitive.
very much about that narrative perspective that, you know, one has to just be very mindful about, well, which prism are we looking at this thing through?
It's interesting that, you know, I think for me as a Nigerian, those are questions I never really asked myself till I've become a bit of an adult, really. Like, both my parents are really strong Catholics, and I'm not here to begrudge their choice of religion and stuff, but there was something really beautiful about going to Bahia and going to Pelourinho and, you know, in Salvador, and literally people were just like, yo, you're the closest to like, you're a real Yoruba man, you know, like, and I was like, wow, you know, and in this procession of people, they made me the special guest, came to me with offerings of, what was it, like melon, corn, yam, and little bits and pieces. And I was just like, yeah, like, this is the most connected I've felt to my heritage, like, you know, in my entire life. And I grew up where this stuff came from. Do you know what I mean? Like, I found that really, really interesting. Like, that I actually grew up in Nigeria, but I'm in Brazil, and this is the closest I felt to who I am as a Yoruba man. It's like, wow, man, like, it is crazy.
I just want to know, apart from Brazil, was there any other place where, like, no, not any other, but like just from food, because you talked about the show including food.
Yeah.
Was there any other place where you were like, that food was like crazy hot? Like, would we go back there for the food specifically?
Yeah, I think I alluded to it at the beginning. Italy for me was just, so luckily in Blue Peter we'll do this summer trips, and we'd spend 6 weeks in a different part of the world and just travel around and stuff. And Italian food for me, and I know it sounds really simple and basic, and I've eaten so many different types of food, but like, I feel like it reminds me of like Nigerian food. Like everything you eat is made with joy. Like there's no, you can't cut corners. Like, and if you cut corners, it just doesn't taste authentic. And it's sometimes really simple stuff, like, you know, 3 ingredient stuff, just simply like arrabbiata sauce, which is just like chilies, tomatoes, onions, and maybe some garlic and olive oil. That's it. And a simple bit of spaghetti in there. And it's like, this is the best thing I've ever tasted in my life. I remember we went to this trattoria just outside Rome. And, you know, you go to a trattoria, it's whatever's there for the day, man. There's no, they don't do dairy or they don't do meat. You know, if you want it, you want it. If you don't, goodbye. You know, like you choose where you want to eat. And I kind of like that. Sometimes I think too much choice for customers is not a good thing, because you end up going, oh, I want everything bespoke, unless it's like a real allergen thing. That's a whole different kettle of fish. But, you know, sometimes it opens up new experiences. Like, I've never had eel before. You know, I might just try that. I've never had it this way. I might just try that. And we had this, it's like a ballotti bean or some sort of white bean, and sort of, it was like a 3-bean stew with Italian sausage, slow cooked, simple dish, man, like with a bit of red wine in there, mop it up with some bread and a glass of red wine. Oi, that is heaven to me. So much so, like, that's my go-to when I come back. Yeah, like, I always go back to this meal. The moment the temperature starts dropping, this thing, I figured out how to make it, and I was just like, yo, every time I come back to mine, I'm like, we're having this dish, and you get really nice crusty bread, and you just mop it up with this stew and a small glass of red wine. Oh boy. And that's the thing though, like, it taught me that food doesn't have to be complicated. Because, you know, if food is made with love, if food is made with people that care about ingredients, that understand seasoning and all those kind of things, then it will always resonate. And food's there to be enjoyed. You know, like sometimes I worry with, like, you know, when you go to like incredible Michelin star restaurants and you're paying a lot of money for very small plates. I don't mind small plates, but the price point doesn't have to be extortionate. But also, it's not even that. It's actually, sometimes this food doesn't feel like it's made with love. Like, it's too well curated. Like, and for me, the beauty of food is sometimes in its simplicity, and it's how it makes you feel when you taste it, when you eat it. And you know, the moment you eat something that's like, yeah, grandma cooked that, you know, like, you just know it. You just know it. Because that's literally years and years and years of certain recipes being passed down, modified. It's like when people make jollof rice. Auntie makes it differently to mom, you know, like, and they're all delicious, but everyone drops a little something. Someone drops a bit more chili in there. Someone takes it out, use the curry powder. Some don't, you know.
Yeah, delicious.
You know what I mean? Like, everyone makes their stuff, but behind it is years and years of years. No recipe book of, yo, this is what we're doing. You know, this is how auntie. You know, I've made it bespoke for my family. I've made it bespoke because I don't like too much spice, but the core ingredients are the same, if that makes sense. And those core ingredients are very natural, very simple, and also very delicious as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. But I've loved those travel and food stories. Yeah, you touched on obviously Steve McQueen and you being a big film lover. So I just want to know what film, I suppose, do you love that you think not enough people have seen?
I've got so many.
He's like, actually, let me come back.
because I think we originally spoke about this, and I had one in mind, but like, there are so many, so many. But like, I'm a big fan of like Ayo Miyazaki, who's he's an animator. He does a lot of the Studio Ghibli films. Well, that's what created sort of the Studio Ghibli franchise. And you know, like, a lot of people have some different preconceptions of what an animation should be. Animations vary from really light, kiddie, funny, interesting stuff to the animations you get with manga, Japanese animation and things like that actually sometimes touch a bit more deeper into stories. And there was one animation in particular that sticks with me. It's called Grave of the Fireflies, and it was made. It's one of Miyazaki's very, very first films, and not many people know about it. A lot of people know about Spirited Away, which was a Disney collaboration. A lot of people know about Howl's Moving Castle. They're the ones that sort of hit the mainstream. I'm really interested in the stuff he was playing with early doors, and it's about a young boy and his sister. and they lost their parents in the big war in Japan, and it basically tracks their two orphans, and it basically tracks their life post losing their home. And I'm not going to give away the ending, but I was in tears. And it's the way sometimes animation can touch us in ways sometimes acting can't, and I can't kind of put it into words necessarily. It's more of a feeling, and it's the slowness of it to the point where you're like, and you can be really still with animation as well. And there's something about it being drawn like a cartoon that takes you back to being a child, and those are the emotions that come out of you, are childlike emotions. And I was, there's a really interesting documentary. There was a guy that basically followed Miyazaki for years, actually. It's out on a Japanese platform. My friend sent it to me, and basically that was my lockdown watch. And he always says, when he animates and when he creates, he never wants to stop feeling like a child, because that's when you feel stuff so purely. You look in amazement to things, whether stuff's exciting, whether stuff's sad. There's no middle ground to being a child. It's like, that's really sad, or I don't like the taste of that, or then you become an adult, you go, yeah, it's really nice, yes. Okay, it's all right. And it's so pure and so honest. And, I implore anyone to watch a lot of the Miyazaki stuff, because that's what comes out of it as well. And it plays with male-female interactions as well, and all that kind of stuff. But also a story of Japan, which is a country I still have never been to, that I've always been fascinated by. He just paints it in such a wonderful light. And, he grew up, I think, just after the First or Second World War, I can't remember. And so that's the Japan he has in his mind, and he's brought that to life in many respects. And it teaches you about Japan's part in wars as well. And, I love history. I love travel. I love the world. And this is one of those that, to the point where actually I've got the entire Studio Ghibli my go-to every time. Little Ghibli thing, just to take you away, because life is intense, man. And like when it takes you back to being sort of like a child again, it is beautiful.
That's really lovely. Thank you.
Good.
I think we've got one more question before we're going to wrap up. I'm going to let my sister take it away.
Okay. Okay. What would be, or what is rather, your life mantra?
Enjoy your life. I even said that when I said it. It's evolved a lot to that, and I realized that sometimes, and actually my mom says it. As my mom's getting older, she's becoming way more like hippie vibes. She's just like, enjoy your life. Don't worry about it. And I think there's something about age that kind of teaches you that, we've been through a fair few batterings, and actually we need to preserve something. And that's enjoyment, whether that be through food, that be through travel, whether that be through music, but also not feel guilty all the time about things. Like day to day, we're being told, don't do this, don't do that. Also forgive yourself for it, man. We're all human, and there was a time where I used to basically take a lot of stuff and put a lot of pressure on myself because I didn't get it right, or, it's all part of the process. Do you know what I mean? And I think we have been in a time that's, and especially as Black people, this notion of Black excellence, got to be excellent. I get it, but are we enjoying our life? Because for me, my parents worked really hard to obviously send us to university, to do so much for us. And I was like, when did you enjoy it? Like, and what's what I'm trying to bring into my life? So I'm lucky. I live between London and the seaside in Margate. And that's my little enjoyment. That's like, I love to swim in the sea. I love to ride my bike. I love to just get some fresh air. And that's how I mix things up. So for me, that's why I started Juju Music. That is the pleasure for me. It's not even a job. It's not even a thing. Even when we put a club night on, or I do the radio show, that's me enjoying my life. And then I've got to go do a studio show, which is full of like constraints and, it's a bit rigid, whatever. But that's the day job, and I get it and I love it as well. But to really enjoy my life, man, you have to try and create a life that you are both happy with and also will be proud of down the line.
That.
Boom.
I feel like that's it.
That was the right drop.
What can we say? What is left to say? Create a life that you're both happy and proud of.
Listen, that was fantastic. Like, absolutely.
Thank you.
Love chatting to you.
Could have gone on forever.
Yeah, there's like, it feels like there's a part 2.
Yeah.
Anytime. Let's do this again.
a side chat of just like footy for a couple of hours.
Oh, let's not go into
I don't need to
football.
be there for that.
Before I forget, I swear Nigeria due to drop a football kit soon. I've seen the tasters. It is fire. They've done it again. Just start winning some games now, man. Start winning stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
we look good on the pitch,
excellent
but
kits, but maybe not the stocks to match.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Speak to you real soon.
Yeah,
Take
definitely.
care.
Thanks for
Bye.
having me, and good luck with the food.